Hello and welcome to another episode of the Project Purple podcast. I'm Dino Verley, founder and CEO of Project Purple, and we have an exciting interview coming up with a very special guest after a few quick updates. Since 2010, we have contributed over $3 million and counting to pancreatic cancer research efforts. We've also allocated over $1 million worth of aid to more than 1,300 patients and families through our patient aid programs. Your monthly or one-time gift can improve patients' lives through research and assistance programs. You can donate now at projectpurple.org. Pancreatic cancer does not rest, and neither will we. Your support is truly appreciated. If you're looking to get involved in one of our many events, whether that means joining a run team, participating in a virtual run walk, group fitness, golf, or anything else you can think of, visit projectpurple.org/events to learn more. Without further ado, let's meet our special guest today, coming to us all the way. I believe he's down in South Carolina. Did I get that right?
That's it, Charleston, South Carolina.
Love it. Co-founder of Good United, Nick Black. Nick, welcome to the Project Purple podcast.
Dino, thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure and an honor. I appreciate it.
Well, the honor is all ours. For those listening and watching at home, Good United should be a household name because we've been working with you guys for quite some time here for a couple years. I wish we had started earlier, which we'll get into, but that's all right. I'm not going to throw anyone under the bus. But it's all worked out really, really well. But the honor, as I say, is all mine, Nick, because just doing research here on your background, you served in our nation's military and the Army in particular. You've got. I'm just going to give you kind of a little bit of a bio here. As I mentioned, you are the co-founder of Good United. You're also the co-founder of Stop Soldier Suicide. Before
Yes.
that, you were in the Army with Army Ranger qualification. You received 2 Bronze Stars. You went to Johns Hopkins. I know you got your master's at UNC. You lived overseas.
Yeah,
Did I miss anything in between there, Nick?
that sounds good. That's a good
Sounds
synopsis.
good.
Yeah,
Sounds
that's
good.
a good
Sounds
good
good.
executive summary.
Well, I want to start, as we always do here on the podcast. The first segment is always our guest opportunity. As I just kind of gave you an intro here with your bio, and I know for those that have participated in many of our Good United events on Facebook over the last, wow, I got to stop here for a second and pause. I think it's been like we're going into year 4, maybe, I think here, or year
Awesome.
3 with
Yeah,
working with Good United, which is just so awesome. I mean, the stars aligned when we got involved with you guys because that thing called COVID came and shut everything down, and social media just blew up, and you guys were kind of ahead of the curve, really, which
sure.
we'll talk about as we get into our conversation here at some point. But kind of want to give our audience a little bit of background. I know we read your bio here, but just a little bit about what you did before and how you got to where you are today, I guess. And I always tell our guests, you can stay as high level as you want, or you can get as deep in the weeds. And with that, the microphone is yours.
Yeah, sure. Well, Dino, thank you so much for having me on and for everything that you do. As a co-founder of a nonprofit and scaling it, it's one of the hardest things I've ever done. And people like yourself, really are what I think that all Americans should strive to be in service of country above self. And for me, Dino, I think that I was at a cocktail party like 2 months ago, and someone went up to my wife and said, "What's the deal with Nick?" Which I've learned is a question that she gets more than I would have thought. And in explaining my life, she essentially said that things happen that piss him off, and I attack it. And for me, the backstory, the first catalyst was really September 11th. And the reason why it's important to me is I grew up overseas. I grew up in Africa and Europe. I spent 9 years in Africa and 4 years in London. At the time, I thought both my parents were in the State Department. When I was 15, I learned they were both with the Central Intelligence Agency. So when 9/11 happened, both my parents were in the counterterrorism focus. And it was a really impactful day for me. I went to Langley High School, which is a mile away from the CIA. I'll never forget being pulled out of our biology class. The principal of the school asked me to go around and comfort the kids. We had a lot of parents that were working at the Pentagon, that were working State Department, at the agency, and with the planes in the air, with the world shutting down. I'll never forget walking around the different classrooms and trying to console people and talk to them and realizing that we were a state of war. So I decided that I wanted to go into the military. Ended up somehow got into Johns Hopkins. I played football there in Army RTC. Commissioned from there in 4 years somehow. And really had the one of the most fortunate and most honorable, luckiest things that happened to me. And I got assigned to a unit called the 173rd Airborne out of Vicenza, Italy. and is an absolute unbelievable group of rock stars, just incredible Americans. And we deployed for 15 months to the border of Pakistan, to a place called Fob Tillman. Are you a football fan at all, Dino?
Yeah.
You remember Pat Tillman?
Yeah.
So it was like it's named after him. So it was on a right, like 2 kilometers away from the Pakistan border, right in the northeast part of Afghanistan, right in the mountains. And it was pretty kinetic. We got into quite a few scraps. We fought a lot. Um, and out of about 10 other companies about 120 men, my company was the only one that made out with anyone killed. I think we lost, I don't know the exact number, which is embarrassing, but I think we lost about 50 guys killed in action. And the 2 weeks after we came home, if you can imagine, bring all 120 guys home alive. And 2 weeks later, one of my soldiers took his own life. So I don't really know what to think about it at that point. But something felt off. And I went back to Afghanistan a year later and got an email from a good buddy of mine from undergrad named Brian Kinsella. And Brian's email was, I think it was like a US News or Time article or something. But it said that we've lost more servicemen and women to suicide than we had to the enemy. And I'll never forget sitting there and reading that email, and something broke inside of me. And there was like a vial of rage that just got unleashed. And I spent my 20s, dedicated to, finding the guys that brought down the Twin Towers at Texas 9/11th, and then like learning that we're killing ourselves at a greater clip than the enemy could ever imagine. Really put a lot into question for me. And it was that moment I decided that I want to get out of the military. I took the GMAT in Afghanistan, bombed it. I got a good story about that, but somehow got into UNC. All right, it's just somehow like I think these schools like just I don't know, like I get the luck of the card. Like they got to let in 10 eggheads to let me in, but somehow got into UNC. But along the way, started a nonprofit called Stop Soldier Suicide. And like you, Dean, I don't know, you probably knew more than me. I thought it'd be easy raising money. I honestly thought getting out that like, oh, I'm like, I don't know anything. My parents were in business. I thought I'd walk up to people and be like, yeah, I'm trying to help soldiers not kill themselves. Like, oh, here's a check for $1 million,
Yeah.
buddy. And like, no kidding, I met with a billionaire. I went to his house, one of the largest houses in America, I learned, right? You pull up and it's like Richie Rich. You open the gate, there's dogs running around, you're like, oh
Yeah.
God, like this is great. The dude wrote me a check for $100.
Yep.
I remember sitting there and being like, this is gonna be something, right? And then I worked every single job at Stop Soldier Suicide for free. Working with veterans in crisis, working with finance administration. No one wants me to run the books. The thing that made me the most mental was fundraising.
Yeah.
And, as I got into it, what was really helpful was having a website. And a website was an opportunity to be able to engage with people at scale, to have people come and learn what we're doing, why it matters, what's the cause. And while we started getting this incredible software to convert, these people into named individuals, to fundraise, to donate, Dino, we were spending all our time, money, and effort posting to social.
Yeah.
Right. So like, and like, as we have, we're trying to engage, we're trying to do, make a buck with a penny. We're trying to do all these things. And I sat there and kept looking at the situation and saying, well, our website's where we get everyone, but yet we spend all this time, money, and effort in social, only then have to pay to send someone to go to our website. If they make it to the website, the first thing we ask them to do is to go back into social to share it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
like, I'm not a rocket scientist, but like, what would it be like if we could take the same functionality that exists on our website and put in a social where Project Purple, Stop Source Suicide, and most organizations are building relationships because that's where people are.
Uh-huh.
That was the whole catalyst behind Good United, right? And I've been at this for 10 years. We've been bobbing and weaving. It's been very difficult to try to roll this software out to the world, but I'm very proud that, thanks to, the faith that you've had and others, we're trying to do something new, something hard. It's different. We built the first fundraising software for social media. And, it sounds, elementary because that's where we all post, but it's so obvious that we just kind of have overlooked it. And, what I'm trying to bring to the world, Dino, is that, I think there's a lot of negativity and pessimism in philanthropy, the kind of individual giving. I've talked to many executives saying like, well, Americans are getting less philanthropic. And my thesis is they haven't gotten less philanthropic. They just shifted where they are. So my, challenge to myself and to Good United is that how do we empower incredible organizations like Project Purple to meet their people where they are? That's it, right? So like it's been a hard road to get to this point. I tell people I have a PhD in what not to do. So like, I don't know what to do, but like, if you ever want to know, like, hey, what do we not do? I'll tell you what that is. But it's been an honor to get to this point. I'm super lucky. I got a, beautiful wife and two great kids, two great dogs. I've never worked a day in my life. Uh, I just find things that piss me off and here I'm at, and I'm still pissed off. So I must be doing something right.
Wow, man. I got so many questions now.
Yeah.
First of all, thank you again for your service, man. And it's just it's crazy because recently, Nick, we've dealt with and we have a lot of veterans
Yeah.
going through this cancer fight, as you probably are aware, right? Like the two big main things here that are impacting our nation's military force from inside are, suicide, the things that, just awful, right? To your point, there were more guys, dying at home than they were dying on the battlefield. And then, now we're seeing just this rampant, like, explosion of cancer.
Gonna get worse.
It's going to get a lot worse, right? Before it
It's
gets
bad.
any better.
Oh, it's
And it's just so crazy to me, man. And to your point, like how you said you get pissed, and you find something to fight here. And I've had some really in-depth conversations with our elected officials and their
yeah.
staffs, because I think, both of these challenges, I think they're well aware of, and how do we avoid that, right? And that's sometimes like for us here as a cancer organization, like how do you prevent? Like there's this term of prevention, right? Like how
Yeah.
do you prevent cancer? How do you prevent suicide, right? Like there's steps I guess you can take, and it's just I always feel like in order to make like we can make change ourselves, and I like to use a term here that we control what we can control, and we can't control those
Right.
external forces. But there comes a point, man, where you need all cylinders plugging away, right? Like you need the government to come in and step in and help out, whether that's funding or protocol. You need insurance companies to step in and do their part, and then you need philanthropy, right? And sometimes it feels like philanthropy is that one person that one set of the stool that's trying to stay afloat, and everyone else is just not in it and not part of it.
I have a ton of thoughts on the subject. And I don't know anything about preventing of cancer, prevention of cancer, but I do believe that the social sector, the nonprofit sector, I think is the underlying lever in our society that could solve a lot of problems.
Mhm.
And my parlor trick is whenever I talk with wealthy people or and everyone someone starts challenging the nonprofit sector, saying, "Listen, I can solve veteran suicide in 15 seconds." And I'm like, "Really? How?" I'm saying, "Tell me how much a veteran's life is worth." They don't know. Is it a million, 5 million, 10 million? Like, well, what if we could quantitatively prove that? How much you willing to pay? And the answer is you don't pay. So, like, we have so many of these issues in our society, and I could speak to the military ones, but if you want to get in front of this, we need to either the next decision that we make to go into conflict, we need to really weigh the true cost of war. It's not just sending the guy over there, or the lady over there. It's saying, how about they come home? How about the incredible costs that we have? We talk about cancer. Well, they're just starting to unpack these burn pits. Dina, I remember we used to joke with these burn pits, right? Like we were in the middle of nowhere. We didn't have water. So like we would just burn everything. We'd be burning the batteries, like inhaling these
Huh?
fumes, joking, walking by of like, I bet you we'll be talking about this in the future. And lo and behold, here we are once again,
Yeah.
so, I don't know, but I do think that, if I was a politician, man, there's so many answers in our society that in a nonprofit sector are not getting a light of day for some reason. And I don't know. I mean, there's just so many great solutions out there, but we're not skilling them. We're not identifying them. We're not putting the money where it needs to be into prevention rather than like, we're not focusing on outcomes, we're focusing on outputs. And in the veteran world, I can't tell you, I think last I heard there's 43,000 veteran serving nonprofits.
Yeah,
And I
there's a
bet you that
lot.
99% of them have the heart of gold. The problem says we don't have the capacity to affect change. We can't drive outcomes. Because if we're just measuring an output that I helped a veteran, how about we measure the outcome of saving a veteran? Because everyone's competing on to help the veteran, whether you're doing
Mhm.
underwater basket weaving or taking ayahuasca in a jungle, whatever, right? But at some point, someone has to actually put the anchor down and saying, we need to save lives. This is how we measure it. This is what we need to fund, right? We need to think boldly about driving these outcomes in our
Mhm.
society and not just being okay with just never ending campaigns.
So this is a thought just came up, Nick, and so we both of us here don't come from a nonprofit background, right? You were in, the military, and then you decided like so you didn't go to school for philanthropy. I didn't go to school
No.
for philanthropy either. I saw a challenge with my dad and
Yeah.
changed that. So do you ever think like, and I've been on record on saying this, like we're trying to put ourselves out of business. So
100%, Dina.
one, there's this ideology here in the United States to like how do you create an industry, right? And nonprofit is a big industry, right? There's certainly tax advantages of certain individuals donating currently, the way that the tax system is set up. So you have that one thing. So right. So for those that are have enough assets and have enough money to take advantage of those tax savings. There's totally a tax savings for that, right? So there's that market. And then there's a $1 billion industry here from employees to, I mean, I think we saw that during COVID, right? With the PPP money, like a lot of charities were
Right.
struggling and a lot of charities, applied for loans and stuff for staffing and stuff. I always kind of not that I'm like a nihilist or like this is like a negative mindset, but you just look at like the cancer space. Like every major cancer center is $1 trillion center, right? And you think about the dominoes that go into that. Similar to like what you said with like war, right? Like you can look at wars, right? Like I know this happens, right? Like you go in, you level a country, you've got, the military industry complex, you've got the building industry that has to rebuild a country. You've got natural resources, right? But then there's all this other ancillary stuff, right? Like from all the issues that come out of that, the negatives, right? Some positives, I guess, if you're in those industries. So I guess my point is here is like, do you think just the way that we've gone about philanthropy here in the United States and maybe, being, living in another country for a couple years in Europe and you said you were, I think, in Africa as well, South Africa, that you have kind of a different mindset, similar to me. Not that I'm trying to say you're like me here, but here in the States, there's just this mindset of like how philanthropy has to be and going about it a
Absolutely.
little bit differently.
Yeah, the several things set me off, but one of them is the premise how corporate America believes that nonprofit executives and leaders should be paid less than them.
Yeah.
And like that is the one that like I will just lose it, right? And just
Yeah.
sitting there, listen, man, what do you do? Like, oh, I work for a chemical company. I was like, I don't care. I just don't care, right?
Hmm.
Why is it that you feel absolutely okay for juicing your margins and a capitalist society, yet you're unwilling to pay for the best talent and the best effort and the best outcomes to reduce veteran suicide? And I take that personally. I take it absolutely personally when you question how much we should pay them as much as we can. What's more important, your chemical or veterans' lives? Pancreatic
Yeah.
cancer. Why is it like this, right? Why is it that it's okay that you want to have downward pressure, an artificial cap on the talent that we have in this sector? And it's just like this self-fulfilling prophecy, right? I called my finance professor from UNC because I was having trouble with a nonprofit, and I was saying, listen, you got to optimize towards something. And this, what do you mean? I was saying, well, do you want top line revenue? Do you want margin? Like, what do you want? Like those, you can't do both. You can't juice as much top line revenue and keep your margin. As revenue goes up, margin goes down. Like that's just how things work.
Yeah.
And I called the finance professor. I was like, hey, Bob, and he's the one that got me into UNC. So he knows that I have some challenges. I was like, I'm trying to help this organization. Maybe you could help me on. And I was saying, like, what do I tell them? He goes, Nick, are you a moron? I go, probably. Like, what's the answer? And he goes, you keep making money until you break even. I go, Bob, that doesn't work like that in nonprofit world. He goes, no, it violates every rule of economics. If you can, like, it's opportunity cost. If you can spend $1 and make $1.01, you do that all day long until you
Yeah.
can find some 3 cents. And I go, Bob, but they can't. They need to make like $1.50. He goes, that's insane. I go, I know. And like, but there's, and like, what do you do, Dino? And it's just, it's
Well,
madness that we have to work under these conditions where like, it's like we're optimizing against Joe in a tree. Everyone's got subjective things. It's saying we can't even build something.
well, Nick, that's where I think the system, in a way, is rigged for failure. Like
Yeah,
you and I think differently, and I do believe that. And I'm not trying to like, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Nick, here by saying this stuff. And I'm not trying to shame anyone, but I am saying though, for the other charities out there listening, like what we often say, like the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again,
right.
expecting different results, right? And you said something that was just so like spot on, this whole idea. And when I started Project Purple, it was a one-man show, but as we started to add people, and I think I realized this, as a maturity, as a leader here in the last like 3 years, as we've seen like really, really amazing growth
Right.
year over year in seven figures, and once you get to that level, you start to realize like how important it is to, you said, have the best people around you and build like
Yeah.
an amazing team. But you've got to invest in that. And I always never really bought into that, like before COVID. And then after COVID, like you have this shock to the system and you're like, wow, man, like you got these people, like we really got to invest in them. And clearly the results have kind of speaking for themselves. But I don't think many charities take that ideology. It's like, all right, you're a $60,000 employee, person's really good. They prove themselves just like most people do in a new opportunity, a new job. And then they're like, well, that's all we can pay you. We can't pay any more. And, that person then leaves and goes into the private sector. Um, but this is like this ideology. I feel like there's like this philanthropy 101 book that's written here in the United States. There's a great guy, and I'll give him a shout out here, Dan Paoletta, Uncharitable. He was a professor out of Harvard, and he talks about this issue. And he was helpful in raising hundreds of millions for AIDS back
Yep.
in the 80s. And, they did it via like robocalling and mass mailing. And to your point, they made money. They spent a lot of money, but they made a lot of money. And then his board came back and was like, well, the margins don't work. Like we're spending too much money. But he's like, wait a minute, but we're making money. And they're
Right.
like, no, 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 it just doesn't work. And he was like so frustrated with it. And he just closed up shop. He's like, this is, so he's been on a mission to change that ideology, right?
Yeah.
So there's guys out there, but like it's just crazy that people have this mindset.
Yeah. It was a really impactful moment for me. I think 2018 or 2019. We were very fortunate, and General Milley awarded Stop Source Suicide, I think, like Veterans Service Organization of the Year. And the co-founder, Brian Kinsella, was featured. He invited me along. So I got to go to Washington, D.C., and they walked us around and they took us to the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, which was remarkable. We got to go into the barracks, which is a really big deal. And there's a whole unit, the honor guard, that you have to be 6 feet tall,
Mhm.
skinny. I'd never make it,
Yep.
right? And then like you have to look a certain type to be able to do it because it's the most honorable thing that we have in the military. And I was down there, and this young specialist or private, and it's only a 19-year-old could in the army, came up to me and said, "Hey, sir, congratulations. What's the name of your nonprofit?" And I said, "Stop Soldier Suicide." He looked me dead in the eye, and he goes, "Great. When are you going to do that?" And it was that moment that his realization came about where we were there to drive outputs to help people, not having an outcome that we were marching towards, a defined mission set, right? And then that day we came up with the saying, we need to take a hard stance. In order for us to mobilize, to galvanize the community, we are going to reduce veteran suicide and national average by 2030. And that night, I went to a fundraising event that was in my hometown in Great Falls, Virginia, the Old Brogue Irish Pub. And I think we set the record for this. It's called Military Mondays. Once a month, the community comes together and they raise money for a veteran nonprofit. And we set the record before. I think we set it like 20K. And I went in there that night and went off completely off the script and saying, "Listen, I failed all of you. I failed you in that we've been driving outputs and that we've been helping people. I've come to this realization that that doesn't matter. We need to drive outcomes. And from this moment forward, this organization is being about solving the problem and not sustaining our service." And Dino, we went from $20,000 that night, we made like 60. And I had a line of people standing up behind me. And when I think about nonprofits, to your point, one of the things that we need to do to control what we can control is to be able to have, a SMART goal, a specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound mission. And maybe realistic is the word that I would put the least weight to. In that we have to anchor our community and our supporters into something big and dare to fail, dare to achieve it. And with that, right, I run a for-profit business. When you go raise money, everyone knows that you're probably not going to hit your plan. They just want to see if you can do it. In nonprofit world, are we here for sustainment? Are we here for like I'm here, pancreatic cancer. We're going to raise $10 million to achieve this outcome that's going to yield Y. We're going to do it over 2 years. You're going to, instead of a gift, you're going to invest. You're going to invest into this outcome. I'm not giving you a monetary yield, right, or return, but I'm going to give you a return towards this cause. And I think that has allowed many organizations, one that I bring up a lot is Best Friends Animal Society. They have a mission set to ensure that there's zero kill shelters in America by 2025. Man, that's motivating as hell, right? But they're able to rally people around that. And I think when we look at our society, right, we look at the philanthropic market, are you there just to continue effort? Or do you have a mission big enough, right? And if you can't do it, band with others. But that's how I think we start to shift the script. Because I have zero qualms. Put me on the Wall Street Journal, any wealthy person. I fundamentally don't care what you think about our ratio. I'm here to solve the problem. If you want to get in my way and stop veterans, this mission set, then come at me. Otherwise, get on the sideline and let us do it. Because who else is, right? So it's just this madness cycle that we got to break through. But I think what you're talking about, and I've never met Dan Pallotta, I'd love to meet him. But man, if we can unlock that in our lifetime, this country's going to be a hell of a lot better off.
I'm ready to run some hill sprints here, Nick, or go do 1,000 burpees, man. Let's do this. That is I just was writing here, and there were so many golden nuggets in that, man. And man, that was freaking awesome. That was awesome.
The worst, I'm very fortunate. I get to see into a lot of incredible organizations like yourself and just large organizations, small organizations. The first thing that I do when I talk to an organization is that if you can't, what's the never, I call it the never green fund. It just always exists. The never ending capital raise.
Correct.
I'm just saying, guys, flip the script. Instead of just having a $1 million annual thing, there's no one on earth that just wants to go every year and saying, I'm going to give you $100 with the promise
Correct.
of being asked for the rest of my life. But what if we flip the script and saying, what are they investing in? And everyone expects you're going to fail, but they want you to try.
Correct. There's a good friend of mine. He is no longer with us here, but someone I looked up to and really, really respected and saw as a mentor. And he used to tell me this great kind of anecdote, Nick. He said, just tell me the amount on the check that makes you go away, to get it done. And, hearing you speak here, I think that's, donors are funny. You mentioned something before, like meeting with someone. So I was in financial services before I started this, and so I take a lot of kind of that mindset. But you said, you met with that billionaire, and you're like, the biggest house in the country, and he writes you $100 check. And I used to find it fascinating back in the financial services industry that I'd meet with a client, they'd be like, "Oh, you can watch my kids, but you can't have my 401k." They'd be more willing to give up their kids
Right.
versus their retirement savings. And you're like, what the hell? So to your point, with sometimes people are just really funny with it. You think you're gonna get it, and it's just really strange, man.
Yeah, I try to tell our team we need to coach people. We need to make an investment thesis. It's not a gift; it's an investment.
Correct.
Say the word investment, break it up into milestones, right, and think big. And saying this is what we need to do. This is what we're going to go for. And I'm gonna, every 6 months, I'm going to come back and give you an update on where we're at. That's going to be your return. And we just got to flip the script. But I do believe, Dino, that I think there's 1.4 million nonprofits in the U.S. Last time I saw it's 2 trillion of revenue, 500 billion given by individuals. Americans are overwhelmingly philanthropic. We believe in community. We believe in so many great virtues, so many great things. And, we just, to your point, we just need to figure out how to unlock the social sector to be able to drive things and not just be always constrained with these artificial ratios, with these, it's just, I can go on forever. Trying not to just lose my mind on it. But, what your organization does, it's a shining light for a lot of others, and you're giving people hope, and you're working towards an outcome, and, God bless you.
Thank you. So let's shift gears here. Let's talk about the whole, Good United Meta, as it's called now. I know before it was Facebook.
Yeah.
How did that start? And I know you guys started, if I'm right, like back in like 2018. When was the official start date for for Good United?
2014.
2014. Wow. Okay. So I know so a little bit backstory. I got introduced, a friend of mine, I forget I won't mention the charity, much larger charity, was at like an industry conference back in 2000. I think it was like late 19 possibly or 18, and was like, hey, you got to talk to these guys at Good United. They're doing this amazing thing with the Facebook Messenger interface. Reached out
Yeah.
to someone there on the Good United team. I won't mention names just out of respect. Well, I will mention his name, Mark Cross, because Mark's a good guy. And Mark was
Yeah.
like, oh, I love your story, but we're just not ready yet. We're not ready yet to bring on, a charity like Project Purple on board, but there's a lot of great things happening. And I was like, all right, well, we'll be ready because I believe in it. I believe in the power of social. And then
Right.
fast forward, I think that was like 18. And then I think we started talking in like late 19 or maybe
Sure.
20. And then, COVID happened and then things happened and we got on board. And I think at the time, I think I mentioned this. I know I was asked, audience doesn't know this, but to speak to the Good United team a couple months back at one of your meetings virtually here, talk about all the great work that we've done with you guys. Full disclosure, we have worked with you guys and raised a ton of money. But I think in that at first initial conversation with Mark, when we agreed to the terms, I asked for an exclusive, which didn't happen. But Mark was like, you know what? No one's ever asked for that. So I'll go and ask, but I don't think it'll happen. But that's like pretty
Probably
good.
shot you down. Sorry.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right. Hey, Nick, if you don't ask, you never know, right?
Right. That's
So
right, Dino. You got it.
um, so you guys were working at this for a while, and
Yeah.
then and also you guys were not part of Facebook, like you were standalone, and then eventually there
Right.
became, this symbiotic relationship with Meta. But for a while, like you probably, playing in their space, I guess, or being able to play in their park and have permission, but not really be part of, fully
Right.
integration as it is today.
Yeah, it's been a journey. So if you zoom forward to today, I'm so proud that we've launched the first fundraising software for social media. So the same kind of functionality you expect from your website software, the ability to harness the traffic, to have people subscribe to your email newsletter, to have people make a gift, to have people start a fundraiser, to have reporting on who these people are in the back end. All of that now we're able to apply to the social landscape, starting with Facebook. And the real kind of piece here is to control, to transform, right? How do you transform this social presence and community that we've all been doing, most organizations, for over a decade. And we've gotten conditioned to be able to have a one-way conversation. But our belief is always that social is meant to be a two-way conversation. And that before Good United, we talk at people and we talk at them and ask them to go somewhere else. And as you know, when you ask people to shift where they're at, churn starts to happen. So there's
Mhm.
nothing more frustrating than having your team and you have incredible engagement and they post and you send them to a landing page and then they kind of make it the landing page and then they make the next click, they don't do it. And then the next click, they don't do it. And out of 1,000 people, one makes it all the way through. And you're saying, well, how the hell am I going to grow this? It's impossible. So what would it be if you could just take all that away and keep them where they're at? And that's what we've rolled out today. And, we believe we can serve anyone with the Facebook page. But we've identified about 4,400 accounts that dead to rights we can drive ROI. The vision, Dino, is to power nonprofits and meet people wherever they spend time. So we started with the Meta ecosystem because Facebook was the big, we're 99% of the revenue. Instagram's coming online, which is really interesting to see. But we have visions greater of, I'm more in LinkedIn than I am in Facebook. So I've never been asked to give in LinkedIn ever. I get asked at least 10 times a day to hop on a demo or a sales pitch, but no
Mhm.
nonprofits ever connect me with LinkedIn. So we think about like the glass half full or half empty. Man, I mean, there's a lot of opportunity out there that, it's just difficult because there's all these different channels disparate. It's not just one place like a website. And
Yeah.
like our thesis here is saying, are we going to empower nonprofits to go to where people are? Or we continue to force people to where nonprofits want them to be, which is the website. So in
Right.
order to get to this point, we started in 2014 with a mission to democratize the nonprofit support experience. And the reason why that is because from a business point of view, we have $500 billion given each year in America. And one of my favorite kind of stats is that the long tail donors, the average American, gives 9 times as much as a wealthiest philanthropist, right? The average Joe. And that $30, that's more meaningful to them than Bill Gates writing a check for $10 million. And when you stack up all those Joes and Joettes, right, Josephines, you get an incredible base of Americans that are philanthropic. Yet, as you know, right, from getting in there firsthand, you don't have the time, money, and resources to build a relationship with them. You can only focus on those with the large wallets. So we have this natural imbalance where we have 500 billion, where the average donor gives 9 times as much, but we can only focus on that small segment that, oh, by the way, every nonprofit on earth is going after the same people. So how can we build technology to take the experience that we can give to the wealthy and give it to everyone? So, as I said before, I have a PhD at what not to do. We spent the first 4 years, I met my business partner, Jeremy Berman, really trying to make every mistake that you could, right? So we did a really good job. In 2017, we had like $100,000 left in our account. We had a team of 7. We were the worst business, I think, in America. And, I remember Jeremy and I went to this park in Charleston, and I was fully ready to just be like, I've never been this bad at anything in my life. And Jeremy deserved lots of credit. Said, no, we got to keep going. We got to, continue mission. Jeremy's from Connecticut. I was like, I'm not gonna let some Connecticut, Yankee tell me what to do and out, suffer me. So like, hell with it, let's go. So we spun up a consulting business. We worked 7 jobs. And as we started to really think about how we can accomplish the mission, birthday revenue started happening at Facebook. And I was on the front seat of that, right? Stop sort of suicide. We got like $5,000 in 1 month, then 10, then 20, then 50. And I told Jeremy, I'm like, is this a mistake? I said, and like the team wanted to send a note to Meta and say, or Facebook, and ask if there was an issue. I'm like, don't tell them. Just take the money. like, don't bring this up. Like the golden goose is laying eggs. Just don't mess with this. It's free money, right? Yeah. So like the free money thing was like a proof that this social community, there is opportunity to be had. But Facebook was driving behind the train, the Oz. Like letting people donate their birthday. That allowed us to come to the table to solve the problems around birthday fundraising. We, in a business point of view, we're trying to crack the chicken and the egg. We always view that in-channel messaging would be like what email is to your digital fundraising. In-channel messaging, like Messenger, WhatsApp, would be for social fundraising. But no one wants to buy anything with Messenger unless they have enough people to message to ask them things. So we had to crack those 2 things, and that's what we've been doing in the last 4 years to get to this point, to be able to roll out where, I'm just so happy and excited because I think for me, like we're opening this door. We want to be the first. I want to be the last, but I'm hopeful that, in 5 years, you'll be looking back and social will be one of the big revenue lines on your P&L. You'll have your website, you'll have your development team, you'll have events, and social is going to be a revenue driver. And I think that there's growth, there's opportunity. And I'm really excited for the chance to open that up for a lot of nonprofits.
Well, I'll be upfront and honest, Nick. It already is. So we just wanted to be a bigger part of it. Question for you here.
Yes, sir.
And I'm a firm believer that I know you joke. You said you had the PhD on what not to do.
Yeah.
Do you think part of the success had to do with Malcolm Gladwell talks about the 10,000 hour rule, right? And we could use every analogy from Jordan to Bryant to Tom Brady, whatever sport you want to go down, right? Or even in professional careers. You think it was something along the lines for you guys, like having to grind out through that? Or is it just, and maybe it's a combination of both, but also timing, right? Like the birthday fundraiser wasn't cooking in 14. Then it came on the scene, and there's no such thing. I personally believe there's no such thing as luck. It's being in the spot at the right time when the opportunity presents itself, and having done the work and done the training and being ready to go at it when that opportunity presents itself.
Yeah. I wish I had some eloquent thing about, intelligence and business strategy and analysis. For me, it's always been about perseverance. I'm not very talented at anything. I usually start last in almost everything that I do. I usually end up near the front at the end. And for me, and what I tell anyone that wants to start something is saying, you're going to have the greatest time and the worst time, but as long as you have a mission that you're passionate about, it's worth it. right? If you're just
Oh,
looking to make a buck, that's fine. But like as you know, at Project Purple, it's worth it. It's in your soul, right? It's in your
yeah.
heart. It's we're gonna do it. It doesn't matter what's in front of us. We're gonna do it, and we're gonna give it our best shot. Because at the end of the day, life's short. Did you spend your valuable time on something meaningful? And from what you're doing, from many of our clients, the answer is yes. And I'm so fortunate, Good United, while it's been brutal and challenging and difficult, um, like I have a picture on my wall right here. I have like Winston Churchill's my spirit animal. So like the three quotes going in order, like success consists on going from failure to failure without loss of enthusiasm, then never, never, never give up. Then a military one I had on my door before we'd leave for mission, which is I don't know how I'm going to win. I just know I'm not going to lose. So, is the mission worth it? And then just keep going. And, we're trying. So I don't know what the question was, but that's an answer to some question.
You summed it up, man. I think, I, I think people think like success comes easy, Nick.
Oh
And I
God.
think like that's where I think, clearly with something like this, like, yeah, you could look at timing, but to your point, like you persevered, man, and you guys are sitting in a park with 100 grand to go, man. I remember the days of like, my insurance business before I started Project Purple. And I always look at that as like kind of a lesson for me. Like, I don't talk about it often because, I was eating ramen for like 2 months, and I liquidated my 401k to start the business. Like I was broke, man. But,
Yeah.
that's what got me through that and was able to slingshot the success and have that I've had with Project Purple. And I was very successful eventually, with that business and then sold it
Yeah.
and, decided to move on to a career in philanthropy.
Yeah.
Question for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, my dad's my hero, and I admire him quite a bit. He's done a lot in his life. And my grandfather on my mom's side, we joined this country club in the DC area. That's like one of these top 10 country clubs. So somehow we're grandfather closet in. I'm like the trash, neighbor, where all it's like private school and like BMWs, and I'm in like a 92, Wrangler with the door not working. But my dad told me the story about, it was really insightful for me, but there's incredibly wealthy and quote successful people. And what he shared with me in one of the moments I was really having a hard time and really struggling and things look really bleak was that, all these guys, they don't talk about how much money they have or what cars they have. They talked about the adversity that they faced. And he's telling me this one story of this guy who was a Fortune 500 executive. And all he would talk about was the 2 years that he was a Marine lieutenant. Right. Because at the end of the day, right, it's the journey is the challenge. And if you're not struggling, if you're not putting yourself, the man in the arena, if you're not in it, to me, well, then I don't care how much money you give me if I'm sitting on the sidelines. Like I mean, I wear Costco clothes and I'm good. Like I have a $9 a month subscription to coffee. I get one free coffee a day. But and that's why like the philanthropic space, I get very protective and aggressive when people go after it. But these people are doing it for heart and passion. They're trying to make things happen, right? And we should applaud them for being in the arena. Not challenging them and how much they make, but applauding these people and saying, "Hell yeah, go after it. You're going up against the hardest things in the world." So yeah, I always try to remember that because it's all about the climb, not the destination. Because at the end, you just focus on the climb, anyways.
Correct. Correct. It's the hard work on that journey that matters. And that's what makes the difference. We're all getting knocked down. It's just a matter of who gets back up.
That's it.
Quick question here for you. And then we're going to wrap things up. We're going to also share where our audience can learn more about Good United and also about Stop Soldier Suicide. This is kind of timely as we record this. I think last week there's some legislation that's been going through Congress. I think it went through the House. I don't watch the news. I do kind of consume some content on Twitter or X, as it's not called. And I know people were talking about the TikTok ban.
Right.
Where do you, and I guess there's been a lot of talk within all social media about more constraints. And I know over the last 2 years, again, not to get political here, but there's been certain individuals and certain platforms about just information that was disinformation, information that was suppressed. Do you see that being an issue potentially if there's like legislation here that could come down the road? Like, where do you guys feel like what's the stance at Good United? I mean, I'm sure you guys aren't, gonna like, stick out and say, hey, this, that, but like, could that be an issue here within social media as a whole, potentially, if
For
there's
sure.
like
Yeah.
legislation?
Yeah. I'd see if there's legislation, I think it could be an issue. I think that, for us, it's just about getting back to our mission set of how do we empower organizations to meet people where they spend time. And the
Yeah.
one thing that we know is people ship where they spend time. So, I wouldn't bet against Meta. I made the joke like when they were down in their stock price and saying, I'm going to put everything I have in this because these guys are going to come back. And of course, they doubled and I didn't put my money in. So, again, don't listen to me. But, I think people, the good United kind of thesis here, Dino, is that, I think I forget which law of thermodynamics is, but entropy, things naturally expand.
Mhm.
So I think the days when internet came out and we had this like nice little consolidated piece on our website, and it's really nice because it's our home and we own it, Dino. And people will come in and we convert it like we own it. We want everyone to go there. People are going to spread out, and it's happening. Whether it's Snapchat or TikTok or wherever hell's next, right? People are
Yeah.
going to spread. And the problem set that we're solving is empowering organizations to go with them. So we believe that social is where it's at, whether it's LinkedIn or whatever it might be. But what's next? And I think there's a lot of interesting thoughts on what's coming. But as I see it, we haven't even capitalized on what's happening now. Whereas, I haven't looked at your Facebook audience, but it stops for suicide. Ours is 750,000 people. When we talk about how do we grow this organization, might as well start there.
Yeah.
And that's the opportunity. And so if legislation comes out, sure. I don't know enough to speak intelligently about it, to be honest with you.
I think my personal feeling, if there is some sort of legislation, I think that might not be a bad thing, honestly. And to your point, I mean, I think like people, for both sides potentially, because there have been a lot of questions, right? Like what's really, and this is a two-part question, I guess, here with AI, right? Like, this evolution of AI, which
Yeah,
potentially could, you know, um, come into here. I know there's been like, I guess you would call it like catfishing videos, right? Of like AI putting fate, whether it's faces or
sure.
videos, and so I think maybe that'll be a good thing because then maybe that will drive people back into the platforms because I think some people have been driven out to some degree and to your point, like I personally spend more
Yeah,
time on LinkedIn than I do on Meta nowadays, just because of like I do more
sure.
interacting with LinkedIn. So maybe Nick, this poses an opportunity for those alternative platforms to potentially connect and interact and grow and evolve. Which I always kind of try to,
Yeah,
as a problem presents itself, there's opportunities in a positive way for other places.
I think there's always positive things to be had. I don't think we've ever had a technological, step forward without a couple steps back.
Yeah.
Second order effects. But as we think about social, there's a lot of stuff that seems bad. There's a lot of bad things everywhere. The one thing that I know is that your organization and we've helped raise over $1 billion that wouldn't have happened otherwise. So I think there's a lot to be good to be had. So
Yeah.
I'll take the good and with the bad. And my favorite thing about social, Dino, and this is what I talked, the very large organizations that we're honored to serve with tens of millions of email addresses. My favorite question to ask is that, well, what percent of these people from social are new to your house file, new to your email list? And every organization I've talked to include the largest, is over 90%. And then why? And that's the one to unpack, right? And like that's the piece of like, I don't think Americans are getting less philanthropic. I think that we believe in each other, we believe in our society and our community. And even for the largest organizations that these people are new, why is that? And like my belief is that Dino, you call me, I'll do it. But if you want me to show up at 6 a.m. for a pep rally at my local high school to walk around the track 10 times, I'm not doing it. If you want me to go to a gala, I don't fit in my tux. I'm not doing that
Yeah.
either. Right. But like I'll give and participate on my terms. I
Yeah.
think what we're seeing is that there's a lot of people out there that just haven't been asked on their terms. Have you ever been asked to give in LinkedIn?
No.
Either have I, right? So like, why not?
Yeah.
And like
I
it's just
agree with you.
so many people that are out there, like so many different things, and we just keep forcing them to where we want them to be. And like you and I are both active on LinkedIn. I've never been, and now I'm going to be asked, but like I've never been asked. I've
Yeah.
never,
I
and it's
know.
sitting there, this is weird.
It's another one too, Nick, here as we brainstorm here. I've never been asked on WhatsApp. And I've been using WhatsApp because I have like all these international connections, and this is the power of social media. And I'm giving you guys a plug here. This person from Canada just, unfortunate situation as all of them are, lost a loved one near and dear. We're a US-based charity. This person found us on Instagram and started an Instagram fundraiser. And
Right.
I DM them on Instagram, and he sent me a WhatsApp message. So now I'm communicating via WhatsApp, but that's another platform. And I communicate, we deal with centers all around the world and deal with,
Right.
people from all parts of the world, not just here in the US on WhatsApp. And it's just a great platform, but that's another one that I'd love to see, again, where people are
Yeah,
connecting, right?
that's it. And that's what we're working on at Good United. So we don't have LinkedIn today. We can't offer it, but that's on the radar. And when I talk to the Stop Source Suicide team, it's so easy to fall into like, well, like the website giving us down, the birthday money from Facebook is going down. And they're like, guys, come on. Like, come on. Like, let's think about, the opportunity, right? Let's not argue over the slice of the pie. Let's make the pie bigger. Look at this. Look at LinkedIn. Look at this opportunity. Let's just think a little bit differently. So I'm excited, Good United, that we're opening up and taking the veil off or unlocking the black box that is Facebook. So now you know who these people are. We can then engage with
Yeah.
them. And I'm hopeful that, and again, in a couple of years, there'll be a lot of optimism in our industry, and people will be really excited about the new people they're meeting, the new people that are supporting them.
Awesome stuff. My last question here, Nick, and this is kind
Sure.
of a loaded question, no right or wrong. Given your experience, you've been in a leadership position, co-founder of Stop Suicide, co-founder of Good United. What are kind of your must-haves as a leader? Like that, if someone watching this is thinking like, hey, I want to start a for-profit, or I want to start a nonprofit, I want to, solve that problem, drive those outcomes. What are kind of some of the must-haves you think, given your experience, what you've been able to do at both organizations?
There's a military quote called "Mission first, people always," and I think that sums it up. So the first piece is how well you define your mission. Is it bold enough? Is it specific enough? Can you rally people behind it? Is it worthwhile? Is it meaningful? Right? Are you willing to put that first? If not, then focus on the mission. Second, people, right? So mission first, people always. And I've learned an incredible amount over the last decade or so with people. And one of the biggest mistakes that I've made and is not understanding the difference between big company and small company, and that it's not just people are generally good. And I have made so many failures because you take a VP from a large, 10,000 person company and you put them into a 30-person company. It's like breathing water to then, breathing air. And it's just so difficult, right, to empower people. And, they call it like hire slow, fire fast. But if we talk about the mission, frame that, and do you really know who you need for the people? Do you really know what that skill set is? And I could, I could pontificate about this forever. But one of the other challenges when we talk about people is that when you start something, Dina, as you know, is that everyone wants to call themselves a chief. I'm your chief salesperson. Well, there's nowhere to go if you're the chief.
Yeah.
So if we're like 5 people and you and I join a company, we're going to make golf balls, right, or whatever. You're saying like, all right, Dino, you're CEO, I'll be chief revenue officer. Well, there's only one way to go, and that's out. So like it's so vital as we think about the scale of accomplishing the mission to have stages, and it's okay. Dino, I'm your sales guy from 0 to 5 million, and I'm going to hand you off to the next person. So like mission and then people, and have you really thought through your people strategy? And it's okay that like if you're an account executive, you don't need to be the chief revenue officer, but you need to be empowered for knowing what your role is at that stage of growth. So those are the two things that in hindsight, I wish I could have coached myself on.
Powerful, powerful nuggets, Nick. Last thing here. Someone wants to learn more about Stop Soldier Suicide, or maybe there's a nonprofit out there wants to learn more about Good United. Let's give them out best places to find those two groups.
Yeah, you can interact with Stops for Suicide and its Facebook page or website. We've got an incredible team. I do almost nothing. They do all the work. So everything I said about Stops for Suicide, it's others. I just help empower them. And Good United, goodunited.io. And I'm on LinkedIn if anyone would like to connect. And if anyone wants to ask me for a gift, I will make that as long as it's reasonable, because after this conversation, like I'm thinking right now, like, why don't we just start asking people? Because it's like like no one's being asked. If you're not being asked and I'm not being asked, then who is?
Yeah, exactly. Now our inboxes are going to blow up and expand with 1,000 requests. I love it.
Yeah,
I
what's
love it.
better than the outsourced, business development rep things that I get right now. So
Oh
I
my
don't.
God. I think I just got three this morning for like my MBA that I need to get, Nick. It's like insane. Between
Yeah,
that and the HR outsourcing is like insane on LinkedIn. They're really good at
yeah,
that. LinkedIn's awesome at that stuff.
they're great. So yeah, hopefully in a year from now we'll do this again, and both Project Purple and Stop Source Suicide unlock LinkedIn as this, hidden cash cow.
I love it. I love it. Nick, thank you for being a guest on the Project Purple podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for everything you've done for our country and community, Dino.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Project Purple podcast. If you like this episode, feel free to share this episode. Make sure to follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. And until next time, please be safe. That's a wrap of another episode of the Project Purple podcast.